My name is Paul Ocone, and a little bit about me before we begin. So I'm an independent scholar and anthropologist, and a hopeless otaku. And I recently returned from nearly a year in Japan, where I was researching otaku culture, particularly doujinshi events and culture, as well as anime pilgrimage. And this research was supported by a Fulbright scholarship, though my opinions and views are my own, etc. But for my doujinshi research, I attended 26 doujinshi events, sold my own at two of them, and bought way too many doujinshi. So if you go to Japan, I highly recommend going to doujinshi events. And if you don't know what that is, then I will. That's what this panel is about, so I'll explain it. And to by way of like introducing doujinshi events, I had a video. However, I had trouble getting the audio of the video to work, so I will this is a slightly awkward um, solution, but I will paste the link to the video in the chat, um, and hopefully you'll be able to play it. And meanwhile, I will play it on the screen. It won't have audio, but it is subtitled, so you'll get the subtitles at least if you can't get the video to work there. Um, So hopefully people have gotten a chance to watch the video or near the end. Um, but I'll return to my presentation. Um, what was that? So that was an ad for the Japanese sports drink Body Mente. But it was also an ad. It's interesting for several reasons. It's really like about fandom and about doujinshi culture and comiket specifically. I'll be talking about those things. But there's a lot of interesting things about this ad, which I might go back to in this presentation. But this is sort of like an introduction to doujinshi through this ad. But what are doujinshi? So the perception here is that like doujinshi essentially means not safe for work manga, or it's even like synonymous with that. But that's not actually the whole story. So doujinshi refers to any independently published printed work, manga or not, from the doujin scene. And it's sort of a little bit like zine in English. And so the shi here means magazine or printed matter. Doujin is like a person with common interests. And professionals can release doujinshi, but it's not really doujinshi if it's commercially published. Um, and doujin is a more general term that's not limited in the specific medium. So there can be doujin music, there's doujin games, doujin merchandise, etc. And another terminology you'll see is that'll be using is circle, which is a group that puts out a doujinshi. So historically, doujinshi came out of fanzines that were put out by a club, and clubs in Japan are called circles. So that's sort of where that came from. But now there can be circles of one person putting out a doujin. So this is an example of what some doujinshi look like. These are doujinshi that I bought at the doujinshi event, Comic One or Comic Ichi. Um, and so many doujinshi are manga, and many of those manga are indeed not safe for work or fan manga. That's like another common thing. But there's so much more. So I should probably like double check this interview. But I was doing an interview with a staff member at Comiket, and if I remember correctly, he said that the not safe for work doujinshi only makes up about a fifth of all of the doujinshi sold at Comiket. Um, and I think it might personally it might be closer to a third, though. Like or but like still it's definitely not it's less than people have the perception of. um but and a sizable portion of doujinshi are original manga or fiction or nonfiction that is non manga not based on an existing property. um and in fact, the founders of Comic were involved in manga critique or reviews as doujinshi. Prose fan fiction, by the way, is often called shosetsu or SS, which means novel. Though SS might also sometimes stand for side story. It's confusing because actual novels, and including novels that are doujinshi, that are sold at doujinshi events, are also called shosetsu. But you could say like so the way of distinguishing between fan works and non-fan works, fan works are called niji sosaku or secondary works, and original works are just called original originale or sosaku, um, meaning creation. So you could say niji sosaku shosetsu or sosaku shosetsu. But while we're challenging preconceptions, like a lot of people associate otaku culture and doujinshi with men, but a huge portion of the doujinshi scene is women. In fact, we'll get into this, but like like around if Comic had started out, it was majority women. And it's decreased I mean, or the proportion of men increased as the time went on, but like it's still, so it might still be like around 50-50. um but yeah, female oriented manga, so women both do what's called so female oriented or female targeted manga, which is often BL, but also many women make male oriented, quote unquote. These are sort of just categories, um, but male oriented, not safe for work doujinshi as well. Um, and so yeah, a huge, like I said, yeah, a huge number of women are in the doujinshi scene, and that's one reason why I like the video or that ad that I played at the beginning, is that rather than centering men, it centers women who have been really like at the core of the doujinshi culture for a long time. Um, and so a doujinshi event or doujinshi sokubaikai are events where doujinshi are sold and distributed. Uh, some doujinshi are only sold at these events. Um, and doujinshi events and culture it's extremely important for the manga scene in Japan and otaku culture in general. It's the cradle of creativity and expression and energy for the Japanese manga scene. It's where amateurs can get their start because there's a low barrier to entry. It's a level playing field. Amateurs are in the same playing field as professionals. And in fact, a lot of people either get their start, like a lot of professionals either get their start making doujinshi, or alternatively, even after they turn pro, continue to work in doujinshi. So some like famous examples. So Clamp, Card Captor Sakura, character designs of Code Geass, Holic, Tsubasa, Magic Knight Rare. So yeah, Clamp. They started out with as a doujinshi circle actually, and that's why they're a multi-woman team. Is they sort of started in that doujin circle. Mio Nakatani, the creator of Bloom Into You, started out making Toho Doujinshi. I have some of her Toho Doujinshi; they're wonderful. Aki Hamaji, the creator of Bolchi the Rock, also got hers. Also does Doujinshi. Um, Also, the massive franchises, well, especially massive in terms of Fate, but Fate, Higurashi, and Toho, like huge staples of otaku culture, all started out in the doujinshi scene, and Toho really remains centered in the doujinshi scene. Um, and with Doujinshi, there's many events uh, throughout the year held all over Japan in all kinds of sizes. So you think of Comic Cat or the comic market, which is the largest fan event in Japan, one of the largest fan events in the world. And so everybody thinks of Comic Cat, and I'll be talking a lot about Comic Cat because there is like a big bias in like the information that's available and like people's focus, but there are so many events that are like smaller than Comic Cat that contribute to like the vibrancy of the doujinshi scene. And most doujinshi events, including Comic Cat, are amateur or not for profit, though a handful are commercially run. Um, and in terms of like event terminology, an only event is an event dedicated or limited to a specific genre or theme or slash like uh, genre could be like the franchise the event is focused on. So yeah, it can be focused on the series or character type, etc. There's only events for characters with cat ear or like animal ears. But a petite only or pucci only is an only event section of a larger event. So some events are collections of pucci onlys. Others may be what's known as all genre, or like allowing everything, but have one or two pucci only sections basically. And only events are smaller events. Usually, and often a great space to make friends and build community with like-minded people. So here's a graphic. It's in Japanese, but I'll try to explain what everything means that I took from the Comic City. It's a commercial doujinshi event. But it basically describes how pucci onlys work. So you have like the large circles representing the whole event, and you have these small circles representing basically these smaller only events that are held within and as part of the larger event. Um, and this is what a doujinshi event looks like. Like a typical mid-sized doujinshi event. This is the event Ketsoku Rock, which is a doujinshi event for Bochi the Rock, which is a lovely experience. But yeah, this is if you've been to like an in-person anime convention, you might think, oh, it looks a little bit like an artist alley, and that's kind of the point actually. It's a bit like when doujinshi events are a bit like specialized artist alleys that are like really vibrant, but like where people really often specialize in comics, etc. But here's a brief history of doujinshi. So the origins of the early self-publishing communities in Japan go back to the 1800s and early 1900s. And early post-World War II manga doujinshi were very localized with limited circulation. Like you would pass a doujinshi between just a few friends. But in the 1960s, 1970s, the modern doujinshi movement started to take shape with letter sections in manga magazines, and it was accelerated through the alternative manga magazine which was run by Tezuka Osamu, the so-called god of manga. And as in addition, there were also student clubs at universities, but a lot of people cite Com as one of the really accelerating factors behind sparking the doujinshi scene in Japan. However, Com closed in like the early 1970s, like the very early 1970s, which left a little bit of a gap or like a hole for a little bit. Um, Filling this hole were early gatherings of manga fans, like the Nihon Manga Taikai or the Japanese Manga Convention. However, there was conflict between some fans and convention organizers. Some people felt that the convention was too concerned between the hierarchy between guests and attendees, among other things. So the founders of Comic Cat who were a Doujinshi circle who criticized the Nihon Manga Taikai and were subsequently banned from the event. So Comic Cat was a reaction to this, basically. So in 1975, members of the Doujinshi circle Meikyu, which means labyrinth, found the comic market or Comic Cat, and it is a place where amateur creators, professional creators, and readers are all on equal footing. As well as staff members. Like the idea is that everybody is an equal participant. And the founders of Comic Head were also trying to broaden the diversity of expressions beyond the mainstream. Many of the early participants of Comic Head were women. Many of the men were also fans of shoujo manga. Niji Sosaku or fan doujinshi grew in popularity in the late 70s. In the 1980s, there's booms of popularity in doujinshi for both men and women. In the early 1980s, we saw an increase in male participants making explicit doujinshi, not safe for work doujinshi. Sort of starting from the mid 1980s, there was a boom of popularity in boys' love or yaoi parodies of Captain Tsubasa. This sort of trend of like booms of popularity in certain anime and manga and game franchises driving the attendance and excitement and energy within doujinshi events continues basically till now, right? Right now, for men, the biggest boom is in Blue Archive, and so you see, but like you see like a number of different media series driving the energy and participation in doujinshi events throughout the years. In the 90s, there were obscenity or harmful comics controversies that doujinshi events had to contend with. Comic had there's like a big backlash against like especially explicit manga and otaku culture in general. Like otaku became a dirty word. And this was sparked by a serial killer, Miyazaki Tsutomu, who was branded as an otaku. It's questionable whether he was or wasn't. Like maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was like, but like the idea that there's like this idea that the serial killer was influenced by not safe for work manga to commit his crimes, which that was very questionable. But like because of these moral panics. It created some really challenging times for doujinshi events. In particular, Comic Cat and some other doujinshi events had trouble finding an event venue that would be willing to host them. But they managed to get through that. They managed to weather those incidents. In addition, in 1999, there's a major like copyright infringement incident with Pokemon, where like a woman went to jail. So that was also like a challenge for doujinshi culture. So the 1990s were not great for like doujinshi culture in one sense, but on the other hand, there's the flourishing of events. Comic Head attendance became close to what the current levels are. And in the 90s, there was also the Comic Head also made the decision to include corporate booths or booths from media companies, which was a little bit of a controversial decision at the time because Comic Con was seen as an event for and by fans, and it's like now you're including these media companies. But the corporate booths or Kigyo booths, as they're called, became an important part of Comiket. And through all of this, I'm mainly focusing on Comiket here because again, there's like a bias in like the available information as well. But through all of this, there was the growth and spread of smaller doujinshi events. In the 2000s, there was the growth of doujinshi specialty stores, which existed before but really started to grow in the 2000s. There's the beginnings of digital distribution. Yonezawa Yoshihiro, who's one of the co-founders of Comiket, passes away. Yonezawa was really like in charge of Comiket at the time, so there's a shift in leadership. So Yonezawa was known as the representative of Comiket. Basically meaning he's in charge. And after he passes away, his role is actually divided among three people who are known as the co-representatives of Comiket. And they're trying their best to like continue on his vision and the vision of the event in general. In the 2000s, you also had the start of international attention on doujinshi culture, the growth of scanlation, and in the 2010s to now, you have the continuation of all of these trends. In the early 2000s, there is the Kuroko no Basket incident, which presented a major challenge to Comiket in particular. But basically, somebody made major threats to people making events, to people making doujinshi about the manga and anime series Kuroko no Basket, and as well as events hosting them. And due to these threats, Comiket made the difficult decision to not have these Kuroko no Basket at their event for a period of time. It was a really difficult decision because Comiket is like one of their like core goals is like freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and so like it was a really difficult decision for them. But there was an interview with the with one of the co-representatives who said, we kind of had no choice. It was more important for the event to continue on than for like any single series, like any single genre to be allowed. So like they kind of had to make this sacrifice in order for the event to continue on. But later on, Kuroko no Basket returned because the person who was making the threats was arrested, etc. Anyway, online platforms have had major effects on doujinshi culture. There's a continued internationalization of doujinshi. There's a disruption in the doujinshi scene due to COVID, but then there's been a rebound since then. Most recently, there's been some issues with payment processors and like online platforms. So we'll see how those things play out. Like doujinshi culture is still evolving. But for doujinshi events, how do you attend them in the first place if you want to go? So the first thing you want to do is research events beforehand. There's katto.com and some maybe one or two other sites that have like compile big lists of events that are very useful. Especially if you're visiting Japan, if you visit Japan at any time, at any point, you can like look up what events are happening when you're visiting and maybe plan on going on to one or not. There are also some doujinshi events, by the way. I didn't put this in, but there's some events that happen in other countries. If you go to Germany, there's Dokami, which is essentially a doujinshi style event that happens in Germany. There's an event that happens in the Philippines, I believe. And so there might potentially be a doujinshi events other places you go as well. But you want to check the event specific rules and guidelines. And you want to look at how admission works. Sometimes to enter an event you have to buy an event catalog. Sometimes you need a ticket, and you can get the event catalog separately. But you want if you're interested in buying anything specific, you might want to research the circles who are going to be selling doujinshi at the event, as well as maps. for where those circles are located. At large events, circles tend to be organized in sections based on genre or theme. Um, and you want to bring cash to events, preferably small change. It's polite, or like it's part of doujinshi etiquette to not pay with large bills, because the people selling doujinshi are just like everyday people who might not bring a lot of change to an event. So preferably, you want to bring small change. If you're traveling to Japan, that might be difficult to get a lot of change really quickly. But do what you can. When I was living in Japan, I built up a very large collection of small coins, like 100 and 500 yen coins, in order to use at doujinshi events. Um, when you go to events, it's best to arrive early. You may need to stand in line. Um, and sometimes the line might be large, depending on the size of the event. Um, and it's usually okay to at the once you get in, it's usually okay to browse sample copies of doujinshi. Often circles will have sample copies marked off. They're called mihon. But it's extra polite to ask first, if you know a little Japanese. But sometimes you don't need to ask. But like I like to ask just in case. If you buy an artist doujinshi, it's often possible to get a bonus sketch in a sketchbook called the skebu, from an artist, but ask. And if you want to know that the Japanese for that is like, you ask you like "skebu daijobu desu ka," which is like, are you okay with doing a sketch for me? Um, and if you want to buy not safe for work stuff, so some events are adult only and have age verification at the door. Some events you need to get an 18 plus wristband at a table at the event. Others you may or others age verification is left to the circles, and you may or may not be verified. I've gotten both. It really varies per the people selling it. Um, a thing to note: doujinshi events are much shorter than anime conventions here, so don't expect the event to be going to like 9 in the evening or later. Doujinshi events often end by like 3 or 4 p.m. And they start at like 11 a.m. So they run for much shorter than anime conventions in the U.S. and elsewhere. And additionally, people like both circles, people selling the doujinshi pack up early, as well as other participants. So people often leave early. However, if you do your research, some events have after parties that are fun to stick around for. So just be aware of that. How doujinshi events work for circles. As I mentioned, I was a circle participant. So you submit your application to the event. You include your circle name, the genre that your doujinshi falls into, and the circle cut, which circle cut is a representative image of what your doujinshi of your doujinshi circle that is put into the catalog. Excuse me. And I included my circle cut when I was selling it at doujinshi events on the right. And as you can see, like I put text in Japanese, and I later put, and this was actually a later edition for the online catalog, but I put text in English as well. Um, of what I was selling. However, like people, circle cuts can be quite beautiful for like artists. Um, or like people selling like manga doujinshi and illustrations, etc. They'll like draw a little like thumbnail image to put on the circle cut. And the circle cuts in the catalog, the circle cuts like are arranged basically on the page with like basically in the order of like where they are in on the within the physical space of the event. So you'll have like table numbers, and the basically the circle cut, you'll be next to whoever the circle cut of your circle will be next to your neighboring table, and then or your neighboring person in the table, and then the neighboring tables will be next to you, etc. um, but yeah, the next step after submitting your application is actually making the doujinshi, which skips over a lot. This is actually quite a labor-intensive process, or it can be. In your doujinshi, it took me about a month to make my doujinshi. And it was a month where I was mainly focused on making the doujinshi. But in your doujinshi, you want to include a colophon or okuzuke, which is basically the information, publication information. But you want to include your circle name and your contact info. And you want to include your contact information because you are responsible for your own work. So if there's any problems, if there's any copyright issues, if there's any other issues that come up, um, you need a way to contact you because the event organizers are not responsible for what you sell. You are responsible for what you sell, and there's like no publisher to rely on either because you are your own publisher. Um, you want to select your doujinshi printer and make orders. And so there's many small doujinshi printers, like many small printers who do things who print uh, high quality books at in small batches at relatively low prices throughout Japan. So it's a this is part of like the doujinshi like ecosystem that has emerged. Um, for the best price, you want to get your manuscript in early. They're not too, some events won't accept, or some printers won't accept your manuscript too early, um, because many printers deliver directly to the venue and sometimes directly to the table, depending on what event it is. And so you can so that's really convenient. I never did this because I didn't get things in on time, but it's an option if you're early enough. Alternatively, you can make the doujinshi yourself. So a copy bond, for example, is a photocopied doujinshi. Um, and you went at the on the day of the event. You arrive at your event. You set up your space, which is like your table or section of table. And often or usually you need to submit sample books to event staff. And there's a couple reasons for this. One is archiving. Another is if the one of the major reasons is if your doujinshi is not safe for work, you need to be sure you're following Japanese censorship laws. This is one of the changes that was instituted uh, during, or like one of the things that got more strict after the harmful manga panics that I was talking about. And some events have a sample book reading corner, or like you can like browse sample books without having to go talk to the people at the table. But you can also browse the sample books at the table itself. Um, some more cool stuff. So an alternate means of participating as a doujinshi circle is commission participation. That's like sort of like consignment sales, where event staff will sell your book for you. Shinkan is means new publication, and so a Shinkan set is basically some circles will have sets with bonus merchandise and doujins that are only available at the event. So you can get some cool stuff that way. And that leads me to freebies. So many circles will give things away. There's bonuses. Some people will give away bonuses with purchases, just free candy or whatever. Like when I was selling, I tried to give away some candy that I bought as bonuses. Some people will give away, will have free items for basically anybody, even if you don't buy anything. Some people will just give away doujinshi randomly every now and again. Like I got a really nice Bolchi the Rock bag, or like tote bag that was given to me because the person was really nice. And a specific terminology of free paper is usually photocopied paper that's given away for free. Shikishi are autographed or illustrated boards. So I have an example of shikishi of Frieden on the right that I bought in an event. So illustrated shikishi are very popular at doujinshi events. You can buy them regularly. Sometimes there's auctions for them for particularly popular circles, or sometimes there's post-event raffles or rock paper scissors tournaments that get shikishi. And I won a shikishi. Let me see. I don't know if I can't see what my Discord preview looks like, so I don't know if this appears on camera or not. But I got this shikishi. I won. This is from Precure. So yeah, it was a great experience. And then also there's sometimes some, like I said, sometimes there's after parties, include like post event banquets that you might want to attend. So more on Shikishi. So this is actually that same pre-cure event the following year, or like the following time it was held. This is basically the display of the Shikishi that are going to be uh, contested in a rock paper scissors tournament later that day. Um, some more cool stuff. Um, Event merchandise. So Comic Cat has a whole range of associated merchandise. Like there's stuff from Comic Cat itself. There's stuff from the event venue. There's limited items from like corporate booths and stuff like that. Range of stuff, but like all even smaller events might have their own merchandise. Like I bought some really cool posters from a couple events, etc. Many events will allow cosplay to have cosplay photography sections, though sometimes you'll need to register in advance as a cosplayer or photographer. Um, Usually photographers you can register on the day, but you may need to register as a cosplayer because you need to reserve a space in the changing room, because unlike American events you have to change at the event venue. It's very frowned on to like take public transportation in your cosplay. You have to change there. And photography etiquette, some more etiquette, some photography etiquette. You want to ask for taking before taking a photo, and you want to exchange contact information with the cosplayer. Um, and usually you want to also ask if it's okay to post on social media if you want to do that. Um, Corporate booths, like as I've alluded to before, some events have booths from the anime and manga industry, and many, even if they don't have like sort of broader industry table booths, some have booths or tables from like creative arts companies, such as like creative software, art supplies, etc., as well as food vendors. There'll be people selling food at events. There's portfolio reviews from professional manga magazines. um, yeah, you can do if you're an artist, as well as and every event or like almost all events will have both consignment companies and courier services. So there's Doujinshi consignment stores, which we'll talk about later, and there's almost always a table for them, and there's almost always a table for courier or shipping services to help either like ship a doujinshi that you bought if you don't want to carry it home, or the unsold, if you're a circle, unsold doujinshi that you want to ship back to you or to a consignment company. Um, so an introduction to a few events. This is the Tokyo Big Sight, obviously. So Comic Cat, we've talked about it a lot. There's a couple ways of writing it. So the official name is the full name is Comic Market, Komiku Marketto. But it's abbreviated as Comiket in English, and it's a little bit in Japanese. You can either say Komike or Komiketto, and either Komike is a little bit more used, but Komiketto is also used sometimes. But yeah, anyway, Comic Cat is the big one. It's twice a year, hundreds of thousands of participants, tens of thousands of circles. By the way, it's not actually like sometimes you'll see like 500,000 participants. So the way Comic Cat counts attendance is they count the number of people entering every day, or like entering the event venue every day, and then add up those days, which is called turnstile attendance. So there's not actually 500,000 like individual people attending. I would guess like estimate as maybe like around 300,000. It's still very impressive, but it's not exactly 500,000. Anyway, the Comic Kit catalog is like a phone book. Um, I was going to show you as an example, but it's currently sitting under my computer. Uh, but yeah, the Comic Kit catalog is like a phone book. There's lines to end all lines. There's so many lines. People joke about LineCon here in the U.S., but Comic Kit is like LineCon is the main event. But however, the line management at Comic Kit is incredibly good. So yeah, it's amazing. But Comic Kit has the heavy weight of doujinshi history and manga culture on its shoulders. They have a philosophy of making a space for everybody, where all participants are equally important. Um, and there's an importance of freedom of expression there. They have a corporate section, a large cosplay section, as I've alluded to before, it has been historically dominated by women. And then for a long time, it was close to 50-50. And now things might be changing, which we'll talk about later. Comic-Con's pretty exhausting. If you want to go to a Doujinshi event, to be honest, I might recommend going to a smaller event first, but do go to Comic-Con if you have the chance. Please don't pass that opportunity up. I think it's an experience worth having. Additionally, helping set up or or take down the event, like they have basically you can do that even if you're not staff, and it can be a fun experience if you're interested. Here's some photos from Comic Con. This is sort of just like the hallway for people going traveling between different places. Here you can see that people. So the most popular circles are on the walls of the event, and that's because line you can form like larger lines. The most popular are by the shutters leading outside of the building, and that's because people line out outside. So they get into the event. They go, so they go from outside to inside, and then they go back outside to line up for a super popular circle. So this is like, yeah, this is a shutter circle, shata sakuru. Um, Anyway, Komitia is another event. It's an only event for original non-fan work or sosaku manga or creative works. It's the largest of its kind, and there's also spin-off events throughout Japan. And there's no cosplay allowed at Komitia. And Komitia is pretty large. It's quite large, but it is smaller than Comiket. Komitia has really good vibes, especially for somebody like me who likes alternative manga and or cool artists. But they have both popular stuff and really niche stuff. You may discover some popular artists selling at Komitia, but they also have like really cool, very highly niche stuff. And so Komitia is great for making discoveries. I ended up buying so much more doujinshi than I thought I would there. Also, their music playlist is kind of fire. Komite is held 4 times a year. They have manga editor portfolio reviews. It was the first event that I sold at. And here's me selling at my doujinshi at that event. Photo is credit to my friend Morisaki-san. And then Comic City. So very few people sort of in Anglophone spaces know what this is, but they kind of should because it is actually a big deal. So it's a commercially run event that approaches, it's not as big as Comic-Con, but it very much approaches the size of Comic-Con. And it's generally focused on female fans. And so there you can find male oriented things there. Like don't eschew it if you get an opportunity to go and you're not interested in BL. I happen to be interested in BL, but if you're not interested in BL, like it's still worth going. But it is largely BL, souljo, josei, and artisanal crafts, etc. The company runs several other events as well, including some male-oriented events, including I think Comic Treasure, which is in Osaka. And the company also runs several other like strange business ventures that are promoted, including like a credit card that's related to age verification for purchasing not safe for doujinshi. It's kind of interesting. A literature flea market, Bungaku Furima or Bunfree. This is an event that doesn't want to call themselves a doujinshi event, but they sort of are. It was originally thought of as the literary comic-cat by the otaku renaissance man Eiji Otsuka, and it changed name. He was a fascinating guy, by the way. It changed name because of like the trademarks, but essentially, literary comic-cat like sums up basically the concept for the event. And it's like Comitia, it has regional spin-offs. This event is focused on literature, so there are like a lot of novels, nonfiction, and poetry. However, for the event, literature is whatever you want it to mean. So there's people selling manga, there's people selling fan works, even people selling merchandise. There's a lot of people at this event giving away freebies. It's good vibes. If you're a nerd like me, it's a really great place to pick up anime and otaku cultural criticism books, like nonfiction books analyzing otaku culture. This is sort of what the literature flea market looks like inside. Some others of note, Ora no Yome is a Dakimakura cover only event. So it's very pricey goods. It's very male oriented. I mean, there are a few women there, but like, so usually I would expect to see women even at events that are somewhat male oriented, because like women do participate in like quote unquote male oriented spaces in Japan. But there's at this event it's very male dominated, but however it's also a doujinshi flea market. But if you're interested in dakimakura covers, this is definitely like an event you might want to go to. um, TRC Only Live is a series of mostly female oriented only events. It's commercially run. Sunshine Creation is a smallish male oriented event that takes place in Ikebukuro. There's good vibes. There's lots of not super work stuff there. It's the SDF only, so it's a bunch of only events that band together, and it's not actually about the Japanese military. I think the name comes from like it was originally like a Kantai collection only event, and then some other events joined it. Social Paradise is an only event for 70s to 90s, so especially 80s female characters. So there's a bunch of retro stuff. Wonder Festival is not really doujinshi per se, but I felt like I should include it. So it's for garage kits, which are amateur figure kits. Um, and if you're interested in that, like, or if you're interested in anime figures, Wonder Festival is a great place to go. I mean, it's also like the major event for the anime figure industry in general. So like they'll have commercial. They have like a large commercial section as well. Um, this is from Be Social Paradise. Just a bunch of sketches from of like retro anime characters. So popular event venues in Tokyo include the Tokyo Big Set, which we've talked about. The Otaku Industrial Plaza TL is a very popular site for small and medium sized events. So the photo I have here is of that. Um, it's probably the event venue that I went to the most often. There's also the Tokyo Ryutsu Center and the Tokyo Metropolitan Industrial Trade Hall, which is confusing. If you go to an event that's held there, you want to be sure because there's multiple buildings or like multiple venues called the Tokyo Metropolitan Industrial Trade Hall. So you want to be sure you have the correct one. Um, so um, let's see. I was checking time. I don't have too much time, but I will go. I have a section on how to survive Comic-Con, which I will try to go through fairly quickly. So you want to planning is key for attending Comic-Con. And I included this because I figured this is the one that people might be most interested in attending. So yeah, planning is key. Check their website, buy the catalog in advance, look up circles and sections you're interested in, and the days. You can make a Twitter list of artists you're interested in, and like see. And usually they'll post like what they're selling. It's a pro tip. You can use There's also online catalogs you can use. The website for that is circle.ms. Print out maps. If you really want something, you want to plan out your routes and consider sharing buying duties with friends. If you're visiting Japan, think about your hotel location with respect to train lines. Check the website for ticket information. There's a lottery for early admission tickets. Transportation options to get to the Tokyo Big Site. There's two train lines. The Rinkai line, which is a convenient access from Shinjuku, which is like in central Tokyo. It's very convenient. Yuri Kamome line as well. But there's also buses. Private transportation to the event is discouraged. You want to make sure to charge your transit card and or buy tickets beforehand. This is what the Kokusai Tenjijo station, which is the right by Tokyo Big Site, looks like. Right before Comic-Con, you can see all of the advertisements for Blue Archive are up there, advertising to those otaku. Packing, you want to bring food, drinks, entertainment. Consider bringing, if you can, a light camping stool for sitting in line. Consider bringing a suitcase if you're planning on buying a lot of doujinshi. A lot of people bring suitcases. Be prepared for the weather, especially for the summer. Winter, you want to bring layers and stuff, but in summer, you want to be sure that you don't get heat stroke. Don't be one of those people taken away on the stretcher because you get heat stroke. If you can, and because like summer is really brutal in Japan, if you can, I'd recommend winter over summer. I did winter and I didn't regret it. And people used to camp out the night before, but don't do this. When you arrive at the venue, the staff will guide you to the general participant lines. The lines are very interesting to get into the event. There's several people wide. You'll be like standing side to side with several people. And the way it works is you can leave your once you're in line, your spot is reserved, so you can leave your spot to stretch your legs, use the restroom, etc. If you're lucky enough to have a circle pass, which means you have like a friend, which basically, if you have like connections in the Doujinshi world, don't and you can enter when the circles enter the halls to set up. Don't arrive too late. Be sure to get to the hall you want to start in. And you can line up for circles you're interested in, but don't buy anything until you start the announcement. But one thing that's interesting is that people do end up lining up, even making very large lines in the event center before the general participants is let in, even before like the quote so-called early admission is entered, or like enter the event venue. Once the event starts, you want to be efficient. If you have items you want to prioritize, so it's also fine if you're there and you just want to explore Doujinshi. In fact, I encourage it. And there's like a setup of the event center. So this is how the Tokyo Big Sight is laid out. The people, you might be wondering about the pyramids because they're pretty iconic. What are those pyramids? Do people go in those pyramids? The pyramids are, I think people can go in them, but they're not used at Comic-Con. Basically, you can see the pyramids sort of in the center of this image. And basically, the pyramids are an architectural feature in the main plaza, or like the main that leads to the entrances of the actual like main Tokyo Big Sight building is past the pyramids, basically. Inside the event, lining up, if a circle has a large line, look for an end of line sign. This is a parody sign at the end of the event in last year. But it's will say Saikobi, or that in kanji, with a circle name or table number. Some lines will be separated from the table and periodically move to the table. The largest lines go outside. Be careful, mindful to not be in the way if you want to take a break. Also, just be mindful of where you are in general, like with your body position. Don't forget to eat and drink. And international desks and interpreters on the Comic-Con staff are there if you need any help. Staying to the end is fun, but leaving can be also a problem. Be prepared for more lines when you get out. Alternatively, this is what I did on the first day of Comic-Con last year. I ate dinner with some friends elsewhere in Odaiba. We walked to a mall on Odaiba, which is the artificial island where Comic-Con is, where the Tokyo Big Sight is located. So we walked to a mall, ate dinner there, and then left. And then I helped out with takedown on the last day. And that's a great way to avoid the line for getting out of Comic-Con. Participating in, and like I said, participating in setup and takedown can be a great experience, especially if you know a little Japanese. Make sure the day after Comic-Con is free, just in case, because on New Year's Day, right after Comic-Con this year, or this past past winter Comic-Con, I was out for most of the day. I felt terribly sick. So yeah, this is like what the Comic-Con setup process looks like. This is the Comic-Con setup guidebook was a Bochi the Rock Doujinshi, which I thought was very cool. Participating as a circle is something special. It's really fun, and it's a great feeling when people are interested in your work. The only event, as I alluded to earlier, only events can be great places to connect with the smaller fandom and make like-minded friends. At the event Aria Carnival, for example, I made one of my best friends. It was really great vibes. Ithu Rengechol is a really cool, tiny Toho only event. It was held in a small like apartment basement, basically like a rec room that was rented out. Maybe 20 or 30 people allowed in at the time, but it was really cool. This photo is from like outside the that event. Um, Beyond events, so doujinshi are not just sold and circulated at events. You can get them at there's consignment stores as well as secondhand stores. And consignment stores are a way for creators to make more doujinshi after events. Um, there's online or download distribution, which includes DL site, Digicat, etc. Some really, I'm running out of time, so I really have to go quickly through this. But there's a bunch of research on doujinshi events and culture that's pretty fascinating. There's like the idea that it's a hybrid economy between gifts and commercial economies, especially like most circles at doujinshi events do not turn a profit. I certainly didn't. I mean, I was making doujinshi for the experience anyways. But much has been said on copyright, intolerance of Japanese media, of fan works, that there's sometimes limits to their tolerance. Um, it, as I alluded to before, freedom of expression is quite important within doujinshi culture. My former research advisor, Morikawa Kaiichiro sensei, argues that there's no spatial hierarchy within Kamaket, which is organized based on personal taste. That's one of his arguments. And yeah, there is a widely circulated article that was published online around a year ago. It said the end of the era of Comiket, which is a little bit clickbait, but it argues that the proportion of female participants might be on the decline, which might be true. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it could be true. However, Comicet's not dying, and there's still women at Comiket, so it's not like it's not 100%. But women might be going to other events like Comic City, which I talked about earlier. But in my research, I was thinking about like the relationships between different events. There's different niches for different groups. Smaller events can serve the specific needs of different groups, but tentpole events like Comiket kind of serve as a way, the guideline or like a guidepost for the doujinshi scene as a whole. And so it's comic head sort of a symbolic head for doujinshi for doujinshi culture in its entirety. Um, Finally, a quick overview. If you're interested in doujinshi and want to buy doujinshi, how do you buy doujinshi without going to Japan? Because not everybody can go to Japan. So you can mail order through some Japanese sites, though you may have to use a proxy or forwarding service. So this is an example of some of those sites. You can buy some doujinshi at anime conventions, though they're often overpriced, but it's a trade-off between selection and convenience. So it's harder to get safer work doujinshi there. And you can see some of the other events options right there. But that's basically it. And you can see my sources here. I have a list of sources and contact information, including my personal and professional Twitter accounts. I'll probably get a Blue Sky account at some point, but in the near future, but I don't have one yet. Thank you very much for attending my presentation.